Don't you understand the deadline? You are holding up the whole yard. Get this move now.
The word worthless doesn't always need to be shouted to leave a mark, but that morning in Iron Hollow it was shouted anyway. It cut through the freight yard just as the first train whistle faded into the hills, sharp and careless. She's useless. Get her out of here. The voice belonged to a foreman who had spent his whole life mistaking authority for cruelty, and to him this was just another ordinary decision. The woman didn't argue or plead. She stood still with her spine straight and her hands folded in front of her, as if she were holding herself together by force alone. Her face showed nothing, but her eyes carried a tired depth that only comes from surviving too many endings without ever being asked if you wanted them. A few men laughed. Not loudly, not cruelly enough to feel guilty, just enough to convince themselves they weren't responsible. Some looked away, most didn't bother. To them, the decision had already been made. She was finished. Ethan Cole watched the scene from his pickup truck, the engine idling while his coffee sat untouched in the holder. He had seen moments like this before, in different towns with different faces, but always the same result. A place deciding who mattered and who didn't before the day had even started. Iron Hollow was efficient like that. It didn't waste time pretending to be kind. The woman's name was Clara Wynne. At least that was the name she still used. Most people in town never bothered learning it. Names were reserved for people who planned to stay. Temporary workers didn't earn them, and broken women earned them even less. Ethan shut off his engine and stepped out, gravel crunching under his boots as the foreman continued stacking excuses. He complained that she slowed the line, that she didn't talk back, that she didn't fit. Clara lifted her head and said calmly that she hadn't dropped anything today. Her voice wasn't weak. It was steady, controlled, and that calm was what made the laughter turn sharper. Calm from someone powerless reminded people they were choosing cruelty, not reacting to incompetence. "That's enough," Ethan said, his voice low and even. The yard went quiet. The foreman sneered and told him to mind his business. Ethan nodded once and replied that he was. The silence stretched tight, almost dangerous, until the foreman snapped that she was done and needed to clear out. Clara didn't move, not because she was stubborn, but because she had learned that moving too fast often made things worse. Ethan walked over, slipped off his jacket, and held it out without ceremony. He told her it was colder than it looked. Clara stared at the jacket for a long moment, as if kindness itself were unfamiliar, and then slowly took it. He didn't touch her or rush her. He simply asked if she had somewhere to go. She shook her head. He asked if anyone was expecting her. She shook her head again. That was enough. "There's a room above my garage," Ethan said. "It's empty. You can stay there, no rent, no favors." Clara studied his face carefully. People who had been used learned to recognize the price hidden inside kindness. She asked him what he wanted. Ethan met her gaze and said nothing. That answer unsettled her more than any demand ever had. The house was quiet in a way Clara wasn't used to, not the kind of quiet that listens back. She barely slept that night, sitting on the edge of the bed waiting for the catch that never came. Morning arrived without punishment. Sunlight slipped across the kitchen table and landed on stacks of blueprints, surveys, and handwritten notes. Clara stared longer than she meant to before asking if Ethan worked construction. He told her he used to, that now he mostly fixed what other people gave up on. Later that day, she walked the property line alone, watching how water pooled and how the soil cracked and pulled away from itself. When Ethan joined her, she explained calmly that his drainage was destroying the foundation. Unstable ground, she said, was just the excuse, not the cause. She spoke carefully, like someone who had learned to make every word count after years of being ignored. Ethan listened, really listened. He felt something shift beneath assumptions he hadn't even realized he was standing on. When he said she was an engineer, Clara looked away and replied that she used to be. She told him her husband had decided the easiest way to win was to make sure no one believed her. The word worthless echoed again, but it sounded smaller now, weaker. Iron Hollow noticed the changes before it understood them. Cracks stopped spreading. Walls held. Buildings passed inspections they never had before. People started asking Ethan what he was doing differently. They also noticed who stood beside him. That was when the whispers sharpened. People said she was dangerous, that she was using him, that she wanted something. Clara heard every word and kept working. Silence had taught her survival. Speaking had taught her consequences. The town pushed back quietly. Permits were delayed. Contracts were pulled. Inspectors circled like vultures. When Ethan confronted the council, they smiled politely and told him he was free to help her, just not to expect cooperation. That night, Clara packed her bag and told Ethan she wouldn't ruin him. Ethan stood in the doorway and told her she wasn't ruining anything. She was exposing it. The hearing came fast, wrapped in paperwork and polite threats. Clara sat while men spoke over her as if she weren't there, until Ethan slid a folder across the table and told her it was her turn. Her hands trembled, not with fear but with resolve. She stood and spoke calmly, laying out falsified reports, structural shortcuts, and evidence behind every word. The room changed slowly and permanently. The ruling didn't come with apologies. Iron Hollow wasn't built for that. It came with silence, the kind that follows exposure. Outside the courthouse, the sky had cleared. Ethan told Clara she didn't owe him anything. She said she knew, and that was why she was staying. Not because she had been rescued, but because she chose to stand where the light finally reached. Iron Hollow remained a hard town, but it learned to look. And Clara Wynne was never called worthless again, not because one man saved her, but because one man refused to look away, and she refused to disappear.